Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to dive right in because we only have 30 minutes together to cover an enormous topic that I know we are all so excited to talk about today. So, welcome to National Conflict Resolution Center's Navigating the Workplace webinar series. This one is all about fear and hope, communicating in the era of AI. And we are so delighted to have our guest, Cheryl Goodman, with us today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this webinar series was really begun by us at NCRC a couple of years ago as we recognized that, especially in the post-COVID world that we are living in, workplace leaders were having to deal with issues that were just at a new level. Workplace leaders have always had to deal with things like warring egos and labor disputes and just different things. But there was like this new level of complexity to what workplace leaders were having to deal with. And so we wanted to develop this webinar series to tackle some of the most prevalent issues that we're all trying to navigate as we go forward and we try to run businesses and try to run teams in effective ways. And talking about AI and how that's impacting us certainly seems relevant. I know it's on so many of our minds. And so we're delighted to jump into that topic today. I do want to mention before we jump into our first question that throughout this conversation with Cheryl, we're going to be inviting you to ask questions in the Q&A. And because it is a 30-minute webinar, it's likely we won't get to everyone's question, but please don't be shy about asking them because even if we don't get to your question, we are planning on doing a follow-up kind of e-blast after this where we will interview Cheryl and get to the questions we may not get to today. And we'll send a link to this recording as well as, kind of answer any of those questions that we don't. So feel free to put that in there as you think of them. So as I mentioned, I am beyond excited to have been over the past couple of months getting to know Cheryl K. Goodman. I'm so delighted she's here on our show today. Cheryl is really an expert at curating the conversation around polarizing tech specifically. And I love how that is phrased because at the National Conflict Resolution Center, we're kind of experts at dealing with polarizing issues as well. But tech is overwhelming to a lot of people, and I love that you've tackled that. You've really kind of taken on bringing together this concept about distilling really complex issues and helping provide clarity to them while also kind of motivating people about why they should
Mhm,
care about it and kind of getting to
mhm.
understanding it. And you've just published a wonderful new book called How to Win Friends and Influence Robots. I love the title. And you're on something called the Hope Tour right now. I would love to hear, as we get started, about why you chose to write this book and why you've taken on the angle of hope when it comes to AI.
Yeah, great questions, and delighted to be here. So, in a nutshell, is the Hope AI Tour is a response to the incredible anxiety that exists in our culture today. And as you mentioned, I study and have lived technology culture from the disruption of the internet in 1990s with MP3.com all the way to time at Qualcomm and to now really unpacking AI. And it was a response to how do we as humans respond to technology, and it's actually pretty typical. And it usually does start with fear. And you can go all the way back to when the loom was invented, where the Luddites attacked and broke the looms, and there were all these things. And so none of this is really new. What's new is the fact that the speed and scale is something that we've never seen before. And this is the thing that we really have to reconcile with. And so when you see these negative headlines, there's always a nugget of truth to that, but it's not always the truth, as we know. And so why I wrote the book is I believe that I've been given this wonderful privileged opportunity to ride what were the last four major disruptions, evolutions from the internet to cloud, PC, and of course, app economy economy, and now AI. And there's a lot of patterns and predictability there. And the number one pattern is a lot of people self-select and give in to fear when they really shouldn't, because this is how we create economic value for ourselves and our families and our communities. So you belong. That's the key message, and that's core to the Hope Tour. You belong. Don't self-select. And I teach folks how to do that through the Hope program, which is really habits, opportunity, purpose, and experiences. You belong in AI, believe it or not.
Okay, I love that transition because my very next question goes back to a conversation you and I had about a month ago, where we talked about this really interesting concept when it comes to AI, which is all about the concept of belonging.
Hmm.
In our work at NCRC, we see so often how a lack of belonging is what frequently leads to fear, distrust,
Hmm.
conflict, not feeling like you're part of a group. It makes you fear them. And we see that. And so, how do you see that showing up in the world of AI?
Yeah, well, there are the folks that are actually building these systems have a tremendous amount of skill that has been curated and nurtured over many years. And so now that these tools are now being democratized, and by that I mean that my book is actually read by someone that sounds just like me on a bot that's trained my voice, right? All of my
Mm.
assets and creative have some extension because my intent is to distribute this information as widely and freely as possible. But the fact that I can code that in, 5 minutes is very disturbing if maybe you studied data science or computer science for many of years. And so there's what this concept, it's like conspiracy of laity. And this was George Bernard Shaw's play back in the 1930s, is that when you have a profession, people inherently want to protect it, especially as it becomes democratized. So the fear is actually on the side of the technologist in some way too. Now, we don't see this when we're sitting at home and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get laid off. My job is going to go away. I'm going to get downsized. I'm going to get riffed. And I don't want that to happen. And we immediately go straight to our mortgage payments or our rent payments, or we look at our refrigerator, like we go straight to homelessness, right? As soon as we see these headlines. And what we're really saying is that there's a tremendous amount of fear for a lot of people, right? Especially, and if I could, I'll cite two things that have happened to the news in the last couple of days. One is Builders AI. Now, this is a company that had promised the promise of agentic AI, and what that means is agents are, to anticipate the needs, to give us agency on these things. And turns out they've been lying. They've actually had a team of engineers, team of supporters offshore that were basically doing the work that magically was creating agentic AI. And so it really freaked a lot of people out. And it freaks us out in two ways. One is that it implies that AI is way better and more advanced than it is. And I do believe, just to be clear, I do believe that there is tremendous power and that there are some agents that are really good. And I do believe there is going to be workforce transition, but it's not like your head is telling you. It's not what the little fear devil on your shoulder is saying to you. It's not that advanced, right? In the sense of you do have opportunity, you do have agency, and my goal is to help you know practically how to do that. And that's what I do in my workshops and in my seminars. So I hope I answered that question. Oh, the other thing I was going to say. So not only that is the commencement speech from Apple CEO just recently also talked about the human nature. So even though I've been talking about this for a long time, CEOs, tech CEOs recognize that the legacy to their own children has to evoke the human spectrum of emotions, which
Mhm.
is fear. So we do need to build a bridge to the future. And I don't think that bridge is fully built now, but it's up to us as community to be able to build that. And I'll just say this, close on this, is that community is a group of people who have decided to grow together. So Hope AI Tour, hashtag Hope AI Tour, is about bringing in people that are making a decision to grow together and that are not self-selecting and resignating that they don't have a space in AI, because they do.
I love that. I love creating belonging through this technology
Mm,
and around it,
mhm,
creating safe space to ask questions. And I hear a lot of what you're saying is empowerment through knowledge and just
mhm,
better understanding. Um, I hope you don't mind, but I do want to address the elephant in the room though a little bit because I
mhm,
know that a lot of leaders who have joined this call today are here because they are trying to figure out that protecting that human element and like how
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
lead their teams through some of these things. And just last week, Dario Amodei, who for those of you who don't know is the CEO of Anthropic, which is one of the world's most powerful creators of AI, he said in a very public interview that he thought AI could wipe out half of all entry level white collar jobs and spike
Hmm.
unemployment like between 10 and 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. So, like, right
Hmm.
on the horizon. And so he
Hmm.
kind of added this notion that really like AI companies and government have to stop sugarcoating what's coming and that
Hmm.
workplace leaders need to start talking about this as a reality. And so, knowing that, here you have an audience of workplace leaders who are wondering like, how do I even broach this topic? How do I look at it?
Hmm.
How do I acknowledge this with my team? What's your advice there?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And, as you know, I'm at the conference and just gave a keynote on really this very same topic. And so there's a multiple competing things here. And so there's a long history between Anthropic and OpenAI, which is the maker of ChatGPT. Anthropic AI built what's called constitutional AI. It's based on really trying to have ethical. If you think about ChatGPT, OpenAI, they basically vacuumed up the entire internet, including things in the garbage can that shouldn't be in large language models. And this is why we have really some major challenging ethical issues. Now, that's a blanket statement. We only have 30 minutes. So I unpack what that really means. So the reason why I say that is that as someone who has casted and crafted the narrative for many tech companies over a long period of time, I'd say there was some strategic timing on Dario's comments as well. So it's not that what he's not saying is true, but I also think that there is a narrative and there is a race to really get market share here. And so I think he's being intentional. But again, how is that news repackaged? How is it then disseminated? So what's the call to action? Call to action is absolutely workplaces have to start the dialogue on AI, because what happens when you don't start that dialogue on AI is your people are doing what's called shadow usage. That means they're fearful for themselves, so they're trying to figure it out on their own. They may be taking the company data, they may be inputting that and going, hey, look, Bob, we got that deck done in 30 seconds. Woohoo. The reality is they took all of the financials and dumped it in there or whatever. And so you have to lead with a policy that basically says, let's share and train how AI works. This is the key. It's not what it does, it's not how fast it's moving, it's not all of that. It's how it works. If you understand how the system works, you'll really have a sense of their weakness, right? And just like anytime there's an opponent, what do you want to do? You want to understand where the weaknesses are. So the weaknesses of AI are afoot, and there are many. And believe me, as I'm at this conference with NVIDIA and all of the major folks in the Silicon Valley, major representation, I'm sitting through the presentations of the layers of technology that has to happen just so perfectly to make these things work. So yes, we're close, but there's still a lot of hard work on those great engineers and data scientists that are building these systems. So it's not set it and forget it. And Builder AI News told us that today too, right? That it's not as easy as it is. There are some shortcuts happening with humans in the loop. And bottom line, you've got to get engaged so you can track what's happening and make real decisions for your company. Because the reality is that this is no different than the internet. Can you imagine if you had a brick and mortar store and you never set up your .com? You would have not
Right.
have had that thing. Or if you didn't do your app in the 2010s, if you didn't do that, this is just another evolution. It's faster, the scale is broader, but it's not going away. And the time is now to get educated and to lead the narrative. Don't get drugged behind it and don't self select. Lead the narrative. It's easier than you think. And hey, I think it's a great time to be alive, because even if there is disruption, what do? You now have a bunch of tools that are going to help you in any pursuit, even in home life. So you got to take these tools for the value that they can create at every single level for every human. And you can have comfort in that when you understand how it works.
And there's that hope piece, which I love. You
Hope,
keep coming
hope,
back
hope,
to
hope,
that.
hope.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, I think what I'm hearing you say is you can't stick your head in the sand. You know, the genie is out of the bottle. So if you are a leader who is deep into the world of AI and you feel like you understand it well, or you've literally never touched it, and you don't, the reality is your team is using it. There are members of your
Hmm.
team using it in some way or another.
Hmm.
And I like that you addressed kind of this concept of shadow use, that
Hmm.
there's kind of a feeling of like, what do we do with this? I know a lot of workplace leaders are asking themselves the question around what's the appropriate thing to do? Do we create an AI handbook? Do we create an HR
Hmm.
policy? I
Hmm.
know in my work, I talk with a lot of leaders on the communication strategies around this. Like,
Hmm.
how do you
Hmm.
just even have the difficult conversations? I think that's a huge component of it. But on
Hmm.
the very practical side, I mean, what do you recommend workplaces do right now? What's the handbook like this for?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, what workplaces are doing and what's not working. So, FICO.tech is the company I run. It is a fractional chief AI officer, and I do come in and I evaluate. I do a 15-point evaluation, and I tell them, "Are you ready for AI?" And surprisingly, a lot of people aren't. Their data is everywhere. There's all kinds of opportunities and challenges to educate their employees. The first step is education and an audit and analysis. If not me, then someone else. And there are plenty of options out there. But the bottom line is anytime that there is innovation, there's a tremendous amount of chaos. And when there is chaos, there are criminals because this is opportunity. So make sure that you're working with someone that's vetted and verified. You really want to partner with someone that has the technology chops, whether they really understand it. So if they just set up shop last year, or they're just now saying, "Oh, hey, I'm an chief AI officer," and it's like, says what, where, like what is the technology background and what are they doing? And then make sure that you're asking for referrals and that you're interviewing people that have been a benefactor of their audit or the analysis. The second thing is policy. So the policy can be created, and it's really not as hard as it sounds, even going into these systems and saying, create a policy for me. I am in a retail organization that's multi-country. So you can at least get a baseline of what a good policy should look like. Then you go through and you sit down with your teams, and anyone that has any influence. And believe it or not, it is almost every department that should have some role. And some say, I can't actually think of any use case in a business where AI wouldn't have a role, some role, right? Because remember, AI is at its root base automation. We've been dealing with automation for a very long time. It is just now that next level. So get your teams together and have them add to this policy. And then, as you say, Ashley, this is really about communication. What are you saying to your employees? Are they fearful? Are they freaking out they're going to be laid off? You can bet your bottom dollar that they are. And you have to get in front of that. So this should be part of your next town hall. This should be part of your internet content. There should be dialogues and conversations. And what you saw from Dario from Anthropic is he's basically doing what a lot of companies won't do. So I want to applaud him for basically acknowledging what I think is, I want to say a worst case scenario, but certainly there's a narrative there that is true. There is disruption coming, and you have to participate. So companies need to do the same thing. Now, a lot of folks would say, why would I possibly alert my workforce that trouble is coming? You're not telling them anything they have not already heard. So you may as well control the narrative and explain to them, especially if you're a public company, what really is at risk and how they can manage the bots. Because guess what? These systems really need smart people that are worried, right? And so if you're an expert in finance, if you're an expert in, whatever it is, AI needs your data, that needs your intelligence, it needs your sequence, it needs your steps. You are part of this process. Now, the negative person might say, well, why would I train a bot just so I could take my job? Well, I don't know. It's like you could hand pick crops, or you could use a tractor or a combine or all the mechanized equipment. It's the same thing. We're just now automated this work. And guess what? The hard problems that require wisdom comes from humans. These are smart machines. Smart and wise are not the same word. Wisdom is what we're after. And guess what? the business acumen of the older, more seasoned employee makes these systems sing, because you have the context to be able to extract things that you've experienced in many other transitions as an employee. And you're going to find that you're going to do really quite well because of that acumen. The group that I'm most concerned about is interns, because interns are now basically, everyone says, oh, well, ChatGPT, it's like a smart intern. No, it's not like a smart intern. I mean, yes, you could get great documents and so forth, but how do you train? Is this your legacy for your workforce? Are you going to have bots as your legacy as your workforce? No, I don't think so. I think that you're going to have humans that are power users of the power tools of AI. And that starts now by training with how these systems work, what the pitfalls are, getting the policy, and getting a consistent education program in place. And that education has to be pervasive and continuous, because these things are changing really, really fast. And you need someone to really be your Sherpa along these lines. So hopefully that covered it all. Got a little animated there, Ashley. Sorry.
That's why I love chatting with you. I'm a hand talker, animated. Yes, anyone who knows me knows that I can't actually talk unless my hands are moving. Um, well, and so we're getting a fair number of questions coming in through different mediums about kind of this communication aspect. And so I wonder if you and I could answer this question kind of together, because I'm seeing some questions around, number one, just even with an understanding of AI, how do you communicate the anticipated changes to the workplace? And then also, how to communicate the benefits of AI to
Mhm,
your team
mhm,
if they're
mhm,
not familiar with them. And
mhm,
I would say on our end, coming from kind of the communication expert end at NCRC, and I always like to say our business is helping people have difficult conversations, whatever
mhm,
those are.
mhm,
That's our
mhm,
business.
mhm,
So
mhm,
I think the piece of advice that I would give, and I don't know if you agree with this, Cheryl, is number one, I really believe in naming it. I really believe in
mhm,
transparency. In fact, one
mhm,
of our webinars about a year ago was on transparent leadership, and just
mhm,
being able to sometimes say, this is new. Here's what we know, here's what we don't know, what we're developing. But I think people feel calmer in the face of transparency than feeling like something
mhm,
is being hidden from them, or worse
mhm,
so, that their leader doesn't have a handle on the situation.
mhm,
And so I feel like, one, just transparency and being ahead of it, being proactive, not waiting
mhm,
until something bad has
mhm,
happened or someone's
mhm,
lost their jobs or a bunch of people have lost their jobs. So, I mean,
mhm,
I think that piece of it, just naming what it is and what you're doing. And then two, to me, people need to be heard. That is at the root of every
mhm,
conflict,
mhm,
is
mhm,
usually people feeling unheard. And so
mhm,
providing a way for people to express, I'm
mhm,
concerned about this aspect of it, or I have this. And you know what? As a workplace leader, sometimes you can't fix that. It's not like you're going in to
mhm,
fix all of those complaints or
mhm,
concerns, but you are trying to just say, I hear you. That matters. That's important to me. We're looking at that. Sometimes that alone really helps eliminate a lot of fear. And there's different strategies for like how to do that effectively. Obviously that we talk about in like our trainings and stuff, but what would you add to that, Cheryl?
Yeah, yeah, no, you're spot on. And I would add to that is that you can't really have a functional conversation about something you fear if you don't have baseline education on the element. So asking a CEO to train the organization and issue guidance on what the plan is, if they themselves aren't really in the weeds of how these systems work, that's not going to really serve anyone.
Mhm.
What you do is you say you care by action. You say you care by, you say, hey, we're going to set up a workshop. I'm actually doing a workshop with ResMed later this month. And I have even invited some of the wonderful leaders on from that organization to this call. And it really is hands-on. Okay. How are you using these tools hands-on? And when they can see the power and they're given access to this under the company umbrella, and they're given the space and the time to do this, and then they're trained in their workshops. Listen, you really only need 1 or 2 hours, right? There are some groups that'll go all day trainings, but the bottom line is show them. Then after you showed them, then you can say, now that you have the baseline for this and what we believe is an unbiased approach, it's not from the point of view of Google or a point of view of NVIDIA or any tech provider, but an unbiased. You need basically NPR for AI. You want unbiased. Here's the pitfalls, here's the downsides, here's all the things that you can consider. And then from there, then folks can understand, oh, wow. Didn't realize that I don't have to spend hours sweating over a presentation when I
Mhm.
could use maybe a tool like Gamma. Some organizations like that. I'm not recommending that everyone run off and do that, but I am saying there are a ton of tools that we look at and that we evaluate, from Google Workplace to Microsoft Copilot. Just because you're on a Microsoft system doesn't mean that you should automatically go to Copilot. If you're doing something different, maybe a Google Workforce is better, or maybe Notion. There's wonderful things that are happening so quickly and so fastly that if you've been in legacy systems, they're not going to be on your radar because your livelihood is spent in one system. So we look at it holistically. What are you using? What are you trying to achieve? Because remember, at the end of the day, this is a tool. This is like asking a hammer about its ethics. It's like, don't blame the hammer, right? It's the person
Mhm.
holding the hammer. These are systems made by humans to automate work process. And yes, there's a lot there because of the weights and the biases and how the context and dual meaning, and there's so much there to unpack. So unless you're giving them an unbiased education on the company dime to be able to explain that, then you really are going to have a rat's nest trying to issue some edict from upon high. Do it through action.
I love that. I love that. And I want to add that we have some amazing questions kind of still in the chat that we probably won't have time to get to, including
Mhm,
one that I know people will be interested. I'm going to do a teaser for our e-blast that follows up. That
mhm,
is, what are the habits you're referring to in your HOPE, HOPE, habits,
mhm.
opportunity, purpose, and efficiency? And so I'm going to tease out that question for our follow-up e-blast that will lead with that one and then get to some of the other questions. And because I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I also want to leave you all with a few resources that Cheryl and I have put together that I think are really helpful going forward. The takeaways I have from this conversation so far is that um, this is not going anywhere. This is only going to grow and become a more AI is become a more influential part of our workforces. And so whether you are expert in it or novice in it, you need to be willing to have the conversations around it and get the knowledge to understand how you're going to lead through this era. And there are a lot of resources out there to help you with that. And so I'll just kind of share quickly that a couple of resources that we've put together for you so that you all can get access to those. So the first is I just want to share that we've got, get over to our, okay, so here, this is free resources for workplace leaders that we've curated at the National Conflict Resolution Center. If your questions are around the communication elements of this, how to have those difficult conversations, and let's be honest, AI is certainly not the only difficult conversation we are having in our workplaces these days. But if you scan this QR code, you'll fill out a little form and then have access kind of in perpetuity to a list of free resources, whether those are videos, copies of our webinars, documents that we're producing, studies that we're releasing, that's all kind of on there. And we can help support that way. The other resource that I want to share with you all is access to Cheryl's book. And do you want to say anything about this here?
Yeah, so it might be surprising as that I really do enjoy in person. We do online, we do digital, but we really see the most success when companies bring in and you do in-person workshops, hour, 2 hours. When you do a workshop with me, I give you the book for free because we know that a lot of people will buy the book and then they put it in their bookshelf. And so we want to activate the learning. And so reach out and let us give you some free books and come in and help you really elevate the IQ of your team so they can be activated and turn that anxiety into hope, which of course, as you said, Ashley, the hope campaign is about habits, It is about, and those habits are really your thinking habits. It's kind of cognitive behavior therapy type thing is like, are you thinking about fear? Are you obsessing on fear? Are you thinking realistically about this to opportunities? What are your individual opportunities as a human with AI, not even as an employee? And then, of course, your purpose as a human, not only as an employee, but as a parent or as a community leader. And then experiences. Our experiences drive us to be that expert in the field. So that's what it's about. And we unpack it and we activate it. And I promise you, you'll walk out with a little bit of sass because you're like, I'm an AI pro now. So hey,
Woo,
it's
love it.
all good.
I'm gonna sign up myself. I can't wait. Well, excellent. And the final thing I will leave our audience with is just if this series, if you are a workplace leader who is going, yeah, today's workplace is full of the unknown in different ways than it ever has been historically. I welcome you to consider this certificate program that we have developed for both emerging leaders, that's one kind of cohort, and seasoned leaders to just kind of think about how are we navigating all of the new issues in today's workplace. And there's information about that on our website. So we are just here in a supportive role. We're here to support your success. And we really want to do that in every way possible, whether it is getting a deeper understanding of things like AI and what it means to you and your company, or whether it is how to communicate around any challenging topic, including the one of AI. We are here for that. Cheryl, I want to thank you so very, very much for joining us here today. It has been such a pleasure to speak with you. I feel like we could have gone for 3 hours. But I have your book. I'm already about 5 chapters in. It reads like I'm talking to a friend. I love it. And so thank you for being with us. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yes, likewise. And thank you for your time and attention and leading into a complex conversation as you do so well.
Thank you. Take care and take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.